Hello, hello. Happy weekend. This is Robert Ferguson, your nutritionist, a guy who cares, and that's why I share. Yes, I am going to share something with some people who catch this that's going to knock you down because you're out there talking about the glycemic index, you're preaching about the glycemic index, and then many of you have taken it to the next level and became knowledgeable of the glycemic load. And then that's become like the end all be all. Unfortunately, it's not. And I'm going to share some information I've shared in the past. And I'm going to share with you a new study that just came out. So, brand new study that just came out that is mind blowing to me. Now, if you're new here, do me a favor, share, like, comment. If you're on YouTube, if you haven't been to YouTube, come on over to YouTube and like and subscribe because we are in the beginning stages of really growing our channel, the Diet Free Life channel. And this is where body politics will live as well. And Body Politics is a podcast that I created that will inform people, put you in a position where you can make wise decisions about your body and your health. Now, you can only make wise decisions if you have accurate information. And that brings us to the topic of discussion today, and that is the glycemic index and the glycemic load. So let me share with you, this study just came out and I was prompted to this. I needed to put this out there. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let people run into the weekend and Independence Day, whether you're in Canada on July 1st or you're catching it in America on July 4th or anywhere you are in the world and you're thinking about the value of freedom. You know what? Knowledge is something that puts us in a position also to experience freedom. And I want you to know this information. Okay. Now, the hypothesis for this new study that just came out is interesting. They could have talked to me 20 years ago. I could have saved them a lot of time, money, and energy. But again, my job is to stay ahead of the curve, meaning the science never settles, and I'm constantly pushing the envelope. And those of you who have been with me and know me and work with me for 10, 15, 20 plus years, I've stayed the course and the outcome continues to be the outcome. But this is something that you want to know. Okay. Now, in this study, the hypothesis was they went in with a hypothesis saying that ultra processed food compared to minimally processed food, they wanted to see the blood sugar response to these foods. And they were surprised. And again, I wasn't surprised. Well, in this study, they learned that if a food is highly processed, it had a less of a glucose, a blood sugar impact compared to foods that were highly processed. So let me say, I'm saying this wrong. Okay, let me get this right. So when they thought that ultra processed foods would cause a bigger glucose response, it didn't. The opposite happened. Now, for years, I would talk about this right here, and I have a whole bunch of examples, but I'm going to use one. So when they created the glycemic index, right, and later the glycemic load, the only difference is the load was a little bit more accurate because it was based on the amount of food that a person consumed, whereas the glycemic index was based on 50 grams of carbohydrates. So what they did is they would take 50 grams of pure sugar, right, like glucose, and they would measure how fast that person would consume this sugar. It became sugar in the blood, and then they gave it the number 100. And then they looked at all the different carbohydrates, right? So you took a white potato, and when they took 50 grams of carbs from the white potato, it measured anywhere from 85 to 95. It all depended on the ripeness of the potato, which we don't know what the ripeness of the potato was. It gave it 95, but we know that 95 is pretty high. So at this point, diabetics and everybody was running around going, oh no, don't eat like white potatoes. And then you had a lot of dietitians and nutritionists saying, don't eat the carrots. The carrots are bad, they're high in sugar. Well, to get 50 grams of carbs from carrots, you're eating about a pound of carrots. Not many people are going to eat that many carrots at one time. So, but again, the study or the glycemic index is based on 50 grams of carbs in every individual food. So a potato will be looked at as a negative. Well, if you look at a highly processed, an ultra processed chip, potato chips, it's given a number 55. Now it's the same amount of carbs as the potato. And the potato, which is like minimally processed, right? I mean, it's cut open, but it basically is dug up from the ground. God made it possible. And that's like worse on your blood sugar. Well, what I've been talking about for 20 years, you guys, this study where they spend millions of dollars, they're just now getting this. And there's so many things that they're behind on. And for those of you who I work with personally, or those who are in our Diet Free Life community, you know, we're cutting edge, baby. We are cutting edge, and so we are way ahead of the curve. And there's some things that I'm coming out with very soon to include our own proven, legit probiotic that I will be making announced this in the month of July. You will learn about it. So if you're catching this in August or anytime thereafter this recording, go to our website, and I'm sure we'll have a link or something there about our evidence-based, clinically proven, not yet, but it will be, probiotic that is going to be a game changer. And I'll be talking about that a lot. But let's go back to the glycemic index, because a lot of you, especially like I have a lot of coaches who had well, they had information in their head. And sometimes when someone becomes a coach, we got to break that down. We're so far ahead of the game, and a lot of people are just stuck. You know what I mean? Like they're stuck in the mud, and we got to get out of that. And the glycemic index and the glycemic load has been very helpful. I couldn't have created the carb threshold report. I couldn't have created the Diet Free Life methodology the way it is if someone hadn't done the work with the glycemic index and the glycemic load. But they're not the end all be all. They are not scientific. And that's why the American Medical Association has never accepted it as science. Okay? Never. And I get it. And we don't want to accept it as science. So the glycemic index, stop telling everybody is low on the glycemic index. When I meet people and they say, "Oh, I'm a nutritionist, and well, you know, I'm all about the glycemic," in my mind, I go, they have no idea what they're talking about. They are so behind the times, like way behind. And I get a lot of pros and medical professionals and other dietitians, personal trainers. They listen, they watch my stuff, they sneak and get it, and then they never acknowledge me, which is fine, because I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for the everyday average person, and I am doing it for them because it can open their mind, and hopefully they are not just regurgitating information that's not real, that's not accurate. Do not and quit focusing on the glycemic index and the glycemic load. It is not accurate at all. It is not science at all. It is not. So you got to stay with me on this. It is not science. Okay. What is science is all of the advancements we're seeing with the gut microbiome. The gut microbiome. So anytime I post anything on the gut microbiome, which I'm always posting stuff, please check it out. Now, in this study, they've discovered what we already know. And so here's the take home. The take home is that you want to eat based on what works for your body and what works for you. You want to like put yourself in a position where you're not just looking at the glucose, you're also looking at the insulin response to food. Because what these people in this scientific journal, what they don't know, what they are fully like lost on, and what I'm one of the first to bring to the world and make it like make sense, is what takes place in the gut microbiome. And that is, the more processed a food is, the greater the insulin response. But again, we are looking primarily, like the glycemic index and the glycemic load is all based on sugars, all based on glucose. And people are not looking at the insulin response, which is the major player on what the activity that takes place in our cells. Yes, it causes insulin resistance, or that's a big part of what we're talking about here. But even before you are insulin resistant, you may have elevated insulin, which is hyperinsulinemia. And I would say 95% of any person that I work with over the age of 35, they have hyperinsulinemia, and many of them have insulin resistance. So let's look not just in the glucose response, but let's look at the insulin response, because that is the game player. So I'm gonna give you one more example and then I'm out of here. Okay, so if you look closely here, on the left, you can see that that's based on the glycemic index. You have an apple that's at 38, and you have apple juice that's at 41. That's very close. That's basically the same. So the glucose response is the same. Now, behind the scenes, and what people aren't paying attention to is if you look on the right, when you look at the insulin response, when that apple is no longer in its original state and it's been pulverized and broken down to juice, the same amount of carbs, it is actually higher, way higher when it comes to the insulin response. This is problematic, people. This is critical. This is something that the world is just not even, they're not even thinking about it. And my clients, amen, you guys know what I'm talking about, because I've had so many clients go to their doctor to get their fasting insulin, and the doctors are looking at them like a deer in the headlights. They don't know. I mean, come on. So it's important for us to know, even if they don't know. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, it's about the insulin response. And you'll have some doctors that'll say, well, no, that's not true. If the glucose is if we look at that, we know everything we need to know about the insulin. No, I was asking this question in 2010, and many of my physician friends were telling me the same thing. And we now know scientifically, with humans, with rodents, with in the petri dish, we know this scientifically, that is not just about the glucose response, because you can have perfect glucose, you can have a perfect hemoglobin A1C, but still have problems on the backside with insulin. And if we were to just look at the insulin, then if you fix things there, you would never ever have problems with the glucose. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, I'll be back. But again, enjoy your weekend. Happy 4th of July for those who are celebrating it. Happy Freedom Day for everybody in the world. We all deserve to have freedom. And remember, continue to upgrade your knowledge, your intelligence, your understanding, your awareness, so that you don't fall prey to those who are misinformed. And I don't mean to beat you guys up who are misinformed. You're just not informed. So the goal is, let's get you informed. And if you want to learn more about how to become a coach, how to take your game to the next level, reach out to me. And if you haven't experienced our free online seminar about the carb threshold report, it's about a report that we make available to people that can be a game changer for the rest of your life. But it's the information that I share in this free seminar that puts you in a position where you are way more informed. So if you want to better understand insulin and glucose, their relationship, the gut microbiome, how it plays a major role in so many parts of our health and our life, uh, give yourself 60 minutes, even going 15-minute bites, 10-minute bites at a time, but get through the whole thing. It gets better and better and better. And by the time you complete that 60 minutes, you will not look at food the same. All right. So I'm Robert Ferguson.